of the music we love. Glam rock touched the hearts and minds of a generation. Those who made the fabulous music, the kids who fell in love with it, and the lucky fans who got to live their glittering dream will now share their stories and tell us who really kick-started this wild and crazy 70s sensation, glam rock. Glam rock wasn't just a genre built around wall guitars, sparkling makeup and crazy clothes. It was a relaxation of moral codes and a whole new outlook on life for a younger generation in conflict with its parents.
When Ziggy Stardust came along, it seemed to change everything, music style, fashion style. He was a one-off. Nobody ever seen anybody quite like David Bowie before. And I think he was the instigator, really, of glam rock.
Since the Beatles had broken up in 1970, the world of rock and roll had stagnated. Teenagers wanted something bright, something exciting, something new and out of this world. David Bowie had already given us a glimpse of a far-out world in 1969.
Ground control to Major Tom.
To me, it sort of did begin with Space Oddity. I thought Space Oddity was an extraordinary track because it didn't sound like anything else that you heard, and of course the timing of it when it first came out was from the moon landing, so everybody was into this whole space thing, and David Bowie just reflected that imagery.
I used to pull his leg because I was one of the first people to hear Space Oddity. He'd done quite a bit of that recording at home, using the Rolf Harris thing, the stylophone, and he played it to me and I said, "It's the Bee Gees, right?" And he just laughed, you know. He was a kind of magpie. He was a bit of a Mike Yarwood. I think he remained that right till the end. He was, whenever you heard him singing, Gene Genie, he was doing Mick Jagger. Anthony Newley he did. He did Space Oddity was the Bee Gees. Listen to the Australian accent in the song. Ground control to Major Tom.
This is ground control to Major Tom. You've really made the grade.
I find that I'm a person who can take on the guises of different people that I meet. I can switch accents in seconds of meeting somebody, and I can adopt their accent. I've always found that I collect. I'm a collector. And I've always just seemed to collect personalities, ideas. I have a hodgepodge philosophy, which really is very minimal.
It took him a long time to establish his musical credentials. He had quite a lot of things that had gone wrong, hadn't worked out, like Davy Jones and the lower third, and his early Anthony Newley influences, like the Laughing Gnome, were very much ridiculed. So he'd had a long way to go to get his more extreme imagery accepted.
He never made any headway after Space Oddity. He was a one-hit wonder. I mean, he tried several costumes before he was successful. People forget about all that.
David Bowie was already showing a talent for reinventing himself, thanks to his eclectic interests and influences. Looking back, maybe it's no surprise that he'd lead rock music into exciting new territory. But for a few years in the early 70s, his success seemed a long way off.
I saw him playing with just acoustic guitar at that time when that first came out, and in Brighton.
The last time I saw him in those days was at the Brighton Dome after Space Oddity had been a hit. And there was Edgar Broughton Band and Clouds, ourselves, and David having a Dylan haircut and playing acoustic guitar. He got booed off after 4 numbers. Could only play 4 numbers, came off the stage.
And I took him to the pub afterwards and said, "You are the future." And he was. I mean, it wasn't obvious at that time, but I felt this was an original artist doing something that nobody else was doing.
Having spent 3 years in the wilderness of space, the rock star born David Jones fell back to earth and became a glam rock sensation.
I saw him at Torquay Town Hall on the Ziggy Stardust tour, and it was mind-blowing to see a bloke dressed like that at that time. Androgynous, I mean, it's quite normal now, but it was weird at the time when people were just wearing Levi's and playing a bit of rock guitar. He definitely pushed the envelope.
David Bowie was a huge pop fan, and Ziggy Stardust really was like him throwing together several different people he admired from pop history. One being Vince Taylor, the British rock and roller who wore sort of like head-to-toe leather, wore makeup, and a character called the legendary Stardust Cowboy, who was this American one-man band, basically, who just went into a studio somewhere in the South and made this incredible record called Paralysed, which Bowie picked up when he was in the States on his first tour.
David Bowie first unveiled his Glam Superman on a tour of small British venues in early '72. By this time, there were nearly 2 million colour TV sets in the UK. So that July, a Technicolor Ziggy made his magnetic mark on the wider British public.
David Bowie appeared on Top of the Pops and sang Starman. Halfway through that song, Mick Ronson, the guitarist, came over to him and put his arm around him. A man putting his arm around another man was just not seen on British TV. The next day, we all rushed into school and went, "My God, did you see that bloke? He had his arm around him. Oh, my God, you can't believe it." At which point, we then either A, went out and bought Ziggy Stardust the album, or B, discovered all his back catalogue. So most of us tried to get Ziggy Stardust from Airco's record shops opposite the ABC in Woking. And then about a week later, somebody would go in and go, "He's got another album. What? It's called Hunky Dory." And then you'd play that and you'd go, "This is just amazing." And then somebody next week would come, "He said this other album called Man Who Sold the World." And you backtracked and realised what this guy had been up to was quite a thing. But it was that appearance on Top of the Pops that I think started Bowie mania.
I didn't think the songs on Ziggy Stardust and Spiders from Mars were particularly good as songs. I think it was all the image and the cleverness he brought to everything.
I'll tell you why Bowie for me was so important. I was at a Catholic secondary school and Aladdin Sane came out, which was the album after Ziggy Stardust, and I got a copy and I was so happy. And there was this thing in the 70s you probably heard of, we all used to walk around with albums under our sleeves. It was like our badge, and we're saying, "This is who I am. I love David Bowie." So here I am walking into school. And Mr. Doyle, the deputy headmaster, stopped me and he said, "What's that?" I said, "It's the new David Bowie album, sir." He said, "Let me have a look at it." And he took it and he opened it up. And on the gatefold sleeve, there's a picture of Bowie in his makeup, naked. I mean, the picture fades so you don't see his private parts. And apparently bringing pictures of naked men wearing makeup into Catholic schools is not allowed. So I got 4 strokes of the cane for that. And of course, that made me love David Bowie even more.
And it wasn't only his fans who loved David Bowie. It seems he enchanted any colleague who drifted into his orbit.
David Bowie is probably my favourite artist in terms of great guy, very funny, incredible musically, really intelligent. You could have dinner with him and not talk about his career. He was just entertaining to be with and he had ultimate charisma. He's probably the only artist I've ever worked with where I thought, "You've asked me my opinion, I'd rather have your autograph."
We used to live at the studio, and it's like 2 o'clock in the morning, and all of a sudden I get a knock on the door. I thought, who's knocking on my door at 2 in the morning? Is it Mick Ronson drunk or something? What's going on? So anyway, I opened the door and it's David Bowie. And I went, "David, yes?" He goes, "Dennis, listen, will you come with me? I want to play you some songs." I said, "Absolutely." I'm thinking, Bowie wants to play me some songs? Oh my God. So I got dressed, went downstairs to the dining room and they had a beautiful piano there. The lid was open and Bowie sits on the chair, and he starts playing. And it's like, "People in small houses don't have the time." I still remember the lyrics. And I'm standing and I'm looking down at Bowie and Bowie goes, "Dennis, come sit here, sit here." So I sit next to him and he starts playing and he's looking at me and he's going from one song and I'm listening and going, "Well, David, how about if you..." And I'm starting to produce a little bit because I was thinking he was so easy to work with and he's like one of the guys. He's no attitude, no snobbiness. He was just one of the guys. So all of a sudden it's like he starts changing a little bit here, then he sings another song. So I'm sitting there with him, just looking at him going, "Boy, I'm with David Bowie and he's playing piano with me, you know, like, holy shit, you know, it's amazing. And we were there like about an hour and a half, and then we both kind of yawned and said, all right, David, let's go. You know, he went to his room, I went to my room, and that was it. But it was just that magical moment, you know.
Small jean genie snuck off to the city, strung out on lasers and slashback blazers, and ate all your...
While glam rock owes a huge debt to David Bowie and Ziggy Stardust, it owes even more to one of his friends.
1, 2, 3, yeah!
David Bowie and Mark Bolan, the two pioneers of glam rock, had partied together, jammed together, and even toured together since they were teenagers.
There was a definite rivalry between David Bowie and Mark Bolan, without doubt. They both knew each other from the 60s, and both were very competitive men, and both wanted to outdo the other.
By 1972, Mark Bolan was the biggest pop star in the country. And Bowie was like, when Ziggy Stardust came out, he was sneaking up on the rails, but Bolan seemed untouchable. I don't think anybody at that point would have thought David Bowie would become the biggest star or have the longer career.
The two old friends had always been competitive, but megastardom magnified their rivalry, and the brothers in glam slowly drifted apart.
So I've been working at Trident, and T-Rex used to record at Trident. And I think we were doing, like, I think it was Aladdin Sane, I think it was Ziggy Stardust, one of those. So I look at David and I said, David, listen, Mark Bolan's upstairs and he's mastering. And he goes, oh, really, T-Rex, wow, ask him to come down. And I went, you know, typical, like, okay, you know, superstars. I said, okay. So I get in the elevator, go upstairs to the 3rd floor, and I walk into the mastering room. And I said, T-Rex, Mr. Boland, Mark Boland. I said, can you, Bowie's downstairs. And Mark Boland says, well, yeah, tell Bowie to come up. So I'm like, okay. So I went back downstairs again. So I walk into the control room. David, he'd love to see you. He goes, well, Dennis, ask him to come down. So now it's like, okay. So I go back upstairs. Mark, he definitely wants to see you. Come down. So he goes, you got it. So he comes downstairs, go in the elevator. We go into the room. Now, you've got to imagine this magical moment of two glam rockers. Okay, you got David Bowie with the makeup and Mark Bolan, T-Rex, there they are. And it's like, hi, man. And they shook hands and then they hugged each other. They talked for like an hour or something. And in those days, Trident didn't allow anybody to take pictures because it was like, artists don't, that's their private time. And I thought, what a magical moment that would have been, just to take a picture of them just shaking hands and hugging, the two mega stars of glam rock.
In September 1977, the two founding fathers of glam rock performed together on Bolan's ITV series Mark. 9 days later, the music world was shocked to its core.
Story, I think it was on Michael Parkinson once, where he's backstage with the Spider from Mars and he's making them dress up like in these ladies' clothing, and they're incredibly upset about it. They don't want to do it. They're going to look completely feminine. All the girls are going to laugh at them. They go out on stage that night, and the girls are throwing themselves at them. And the next day, they're in the dressing room, and they're fighting over the mascara.
British schools in the 70s possibly weren't the best places to debate the coolest eyeshadow, but many teenage boys experimented with the glam rock look.
I'd like to dress like David Bowie, but I didn't have the courage, because I lived in a place called Woking, and if I dressed like David Bowie, I wouldn't be sitting here now. I'd be 6 feet under. It was very difficult at that time. But you could have the Bowie haircut, I suppose.
It was urban, really, as well. It probably needs to be, because you could get away with blokes wearing makeup in London, and I'm sure that other parts of the UK where you couldn't have done, you got beaten up for it.
The appeal of glam rock for me was strictly the music initially. The glittery stuff and the makeup looked great on telly, did not work on the streets. Me and the brothers weren't having it.
Today, glam rock evokes memories of wall guitars, crazy suits and glitzy makeup. But behind all that was something more thoughtful, something deeper, and for parts of the British establishment, something sinister.
I think glam was very freeing, especially for blokes to be able to wear mascara and lipstick and makeup without being jeered at. That you know, from the fashion point of view or the sociological point of view, leaving the music out of it for a minute, that was a massive change.
For a man to start...
Mop tops. And then this comes along. It's another thing to just get outraged about.
It sort of really attracted me that they were idols that your parents didn't like. They were wearing makeup, glitter, clothes that your parents wouldn't want you to wear.
Bowie presented himself through his makeup and his clothing and his image as an outsider, and teenagers respond to outsiders because teenagers are outsiders.
It's young people expressing themselves, so when the new generation comes along, they want to be different. They don't want to be like their elder brother or the people down the road who are 10 years older than them.
The glitzy look of glam, and David Bowie's in particular, took the first steps into a future where many in Britain were not ready to venture.
So here you had groundbreaking music that I think changed a whole generation's lives, but also men that were questioning what it was to be a man.
Obviously, the gay homosexual connotations of that made it a radical statement, and it caught all of us, and we just came. We were 13, 14, you know, we were just amazed by this moment.
David Bowie wanted people to be amazed. Throughout his career, he was attracted to outsiders and to the unconventional. He worked this into his act and thrived on extreme reactions to his latest look.
Bowie pretended or told people that he was like bisexual, but I don't think he was at all. Mick Ronson told me that, you know, privately, that he goes, even when after a gig, after they did a show with Bowie and Spiders from Mars, that Bowie would invite some young guys, some young kids to come into the dressing room and ask for Bowie in a like campish way or a gayish way, whatever, and just to show the band that, wait a minute, just in case they had an interview with somebody and they could say, oh yeah, Bowie's gay, you know, and he just started that rumor because like bad publicity was good publicity.
We can thank the man who dominated the glam rock stage before he transcended the genre completely.
Bowie realised that glam had a very limited shelf life. You can think of Starman, but you could think of Let's Dance, or you can think of Station to Station. They're all completely different records, and he represents all those eras.
I think it's impossible for artists who have been, you know, around for several years to be cool. I mean, someone like David Bowie, obviously, but he's remained it. But that's because he has a fierce intelligence about him, and that he had shaped his... I mean, he even included death into his career. I mean, that whole releasing the album on the not telling people about having cancer, withdrawing from the public eye, but putting out music on certain days and mysterious videos. He kept the mystery about him.
He was a genius. He was idolised by so many people. He really kick-started musical revolutions and genres. I mean, his death hit a lot of people very, very hard, and it's unsurprising.
I mean, the 70s belonged to David Bowie. The Beatles, if the 60s belonged to the Beatles, the 70s belonged to David Bowie.